Good afternoon. It's 4:15. This is the Historic District Commission, Town of Fairfield. Today is February 13th, 2025. The notice of this hearing was published on the Friday, January 31st edition of the Fairfield Citizen. Let's go ahead and take attendance. Art Gravanis.
Here. I'm here.
Okay. Jim Bohan.
Here, Rosina, thank you.
Maura Garrett.
I'm here.
And I know Darren Raymond Locke will be coming in a few minutes late. I'm Rosina Negron, and absent today are George Clark and Jim Accomando. The alternate voting sequence will be both Jim Bohan and Maura will be participating since we're missing two of the commissioners. In attendance today also is Greg Valente, which will be an upcoming alternate commissioner. He's going for the RTM in a week, I believe. The first item on the agenda today is Jim and Kate Rogers, 221 Harbor Road, Southport, Connecticut, for a property located at 221 Harbor Road. For A, remove existing non-compliant cobble half parking strip along Harbor Road. B, widen the existing driveway entrance to 20 feet to allow for 2 cars. And C, build new driveway entrance with asphalt from street into property and antique cobble band that leads to the garage in the rear. Is there anyone here representing this application?
Yes, Will Hibbs from Oliver Design Associates.
Okay, you can go ahead and start.
All right. Let me remember how to share my screen here.
And just to say, Darren Raymond Locke has just joined.
All right. All right. What we are proposing to do is, these are the current conditions. At the residence, there's this, 4 feet or so of cobble parking that runs from the street asphalt in towards the property. And in redesigning the driveway and going to zoning and engineering, we have found out that what is here that the Rogers inherited when they bought the property is not compliant with town zoning regulations. So we are looking to remove that existing strip as seen in the picture here. And instead, I'll reference the plan here, turn that strip back into landscape, garden or grass. And then instead take the entrance of the driveway as seen here in this lower picture with the red mailbox and make it 2 cars wide, so that there is additional parking space there, and kind of make it a safer, more generous space for coming and going out of their driveway. In talking to the town, the cobble cannot meet the street asphalt. You're supposed to have asphalt coming off the road. So what we've proposed here is, a band of asphalt as seen here, and then having the throat of the driveway be 2 cars wide and paving that all with the antique cobble before transitioning to an asphalt driveway with a cobble band that leads you down around the house. And into the garage. That's what's back here in this lower section. And I think that is sort of in summary, this is it on the survey. This was it. It's a little clearer to see without the survey underneath, but just kind of the design. So that antique cobble was where you see that hatch pattern will be reminiscent of this antique cobble here. And I think that's yeah, that's it in summary. Any questions or? Oh, hold on. I don't think. Oh wait, did we just? I don't know what I've done.
Darren, do you have any questions?
No questions for me. Thanks so much.
Art Gravanis, do you have any questions?
None for me, thanks.
Jim Bohan, do you have any questions?
Yeah, quick question. What's the material of the driveway east of the new cobblestones?
That will be asphalt. Replacing the existing asphalt. We are proposing to do a band at grade with the same antique cobblestone, 14 inches wide or so. But then all that infill material would just be asphalt.
Okay, thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
No other questions, Rosina.
Mara Garg, do you have any questions?
Yeah, the only question I had was I just wanted to make sure when I looked at the pictures that you were taking out that little bit of grass and dirt with the cobblestone, and you answered that. So I have no other questions.
Okay.
I don't have any questions. We also did not receive any letters in favor of this application or opposing this application. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
The next item in the agenda is Andy and Darren Locke, 515 Stilson Road, Fairfield, Connecticut, for a property located at 515 Stilson Road to take action on the study guide for the Caroline and Walker Sherwood House local historic property designation. I believe Darren is here to present.
Hi, Rosina, I have to recuse myself from voting on this one.
Yep.
So I'm not on my computer right now because I can't actually get to it. So I can't share the study guide with you, but I presented the study guide in the summer of last year. My house is 1820, circa 1820 with an 1860 addition. It was a farmhouse attached to 38.5 acres up near Little Pub. It's one of the last remaining vestiges of this type of transitional vernacular architecture left in this part of the town. It has a pretty significant history in terms of use. It was a farm until 1955 when it was subdivided to create the neighborhood that is now here near OHS. Osborne Hill School. After the commission voted through the study guide, it went over to planning and zoning, who voted it through, and then up to the State Historic Preservation Office, who also voted it through. So now it's just coming back to you guys to hopefully move on to the next round so we can be a local designated property. Happy to answer any questions.
Art, do you have any questions?
No, thank you.
Jim Bohan, do you have any questions?
What's the status of the report now? We've reviewed it. Have we approved it?
You approved it originally. It's just come back from SHPO. I don't believe there were any comments, so now it has to move on to getting balloted. So they have to ballot us to make sure we still want to pursue the designation and then go on to the RTM.
Okay. So are you looking for any action by us at this meeting today?
I believe, and Rosina can speak to this because technically I can't be part of the commission for this.
Okay.
That you guys just need to approve that you got the information from SHPO and that you're not going to take any further, editory action on it, and you're ready to move it through to the RTM and accept it as is.
Okay, fine. Thank you very much.
Mara, do you have any questions?
Darren, my only question is the approvals that came back from SHPO. Like I looked, this wasn't in the data in our agenda materials. Will that go into the record? I just haven't seen it.
SHPO doesn't really like, so in cases like this, local historic designation is really more town-based unless something goes up to SHPO that really isn't well written. They usually will push it through, although they might have edits and things for the study guide. In this particular case, I reused what my state register nomination was, so they had already technically approved it before, so it was just a question of repackaging it. The approvals really don't necessarily, well, it's approved, so they're happy for us to move forward on it, but it doesn't necessarily stop the process.
Yeah, so when they approve it, are you saying you only hear from them if it's negative? Or if
No,
something,
no, I was at the meeting, and I heard, what they said about the house and any feedback that they have. They approved, they were happy with the study guide as is. They didn't propose any edits. Or if they did, I've made them already. It was a while ago now. And they just didn't have any edits for us, so they're happy
okay.
to have it move forward as is.
Yeah, I'm just trying to make sure I understand the logistics. So then we
100%.
approve in this meeting, we would have it on our record saying it was all approved, and then you bring that to RTM or we bring that?
Technically, it should be forwarded from the commission.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
And I don't have any questions or comments. We did not receive any letters in favor of this application at this issue at this time. I know there were letters when you guys submitted originally, and we did not receive any letters opposing. So that's it. Thank you.
Great.
The
Thanks.
next item on the agenda is the Pequot Yacht Club, 647 Harbor Road in Southport, Connecticut, for a property located at 669 Harbor Road, to discuss and take such action as is appropriate to write a letter to the Town of Fairfield Planning and Zoning Department regarding the FEMA requirements and possible exemption regarding the Pequot Yacht Club at 669 Harbor Road. Do we have someone here to present?
We do, Madam Chairman. For the record, my name is John Fallon. I'm pleased to be here representing the Pequot Yacht Club. With me today is Mr. Kenneth Murphy, who's the Vice Commodore of the Yacht Club, and also Mr. Jim Vos, who will be speaking to you shortly. If I may give you some background here with regard to this matter. The structure here, known as the Senior Clubhouse, is listed on the state and national register of historic structures, and that is important, as I'll get into in a minute. John Wozalewski of David Parker Architects is here also with us, should you have any questions with regard to the historic nature, the historic integrity, and the placement of this structure on both the state and national register. It's obviously under your jurisdiction, as it is located in the Southport Historic District. The structure, if you look at tax assessment records, is valued at $432,447. That's important because under normal FEMA application, any improvements that might be made to the property that exceed 50% of the value of the structure subjects the structure to having to be brought to FEMA compliance, which you're going to hear about in terms of the Senior Clubhouse in a minute. Right now, we are at a very early stage as a club contemplating improvements to the structure for the benefit of our existing members. The scope and nature of those improvements have not yet been determined. Obviously, if any exterior alterations with regard to our ultimate plans were to be included, we would have to come to you for a certificate of appropriateness. But one thing we do know at this very early stage is that any renovation and improvement to the internal aspects of the clubhouse especially are going to exceed $216,000 in today's money. And if that's the case, then subject to what brings us here today, we would have to bring the building up to FEMA standards, FEMA requirements. And as you will hear momentarily, the impacts on this structure in that regard would be extreme and extremely negative, and certainly jeopardize substantially its continuation as a designated historic structure. Now, that is important and gets to the heart of the letter that we're hopeful you will authorize the chair to send to zoning, because in section 32.8 II of the zoning regulations, there's a provision that says that FEMA compliance will not be required if the alteration of the structure to achieve FEMA compliance could preclude the structure from its continued designation as a historic structure on the national and/or state register. In essence, what it is saying is, if in order to bring the building into compliance with FEMA, you're going to jeopardize its historic status and integrity, there's a basis for exemption. That ultimate determination is made by the appropriate division of the DEEP. But the first step is a recommendation from the zoning department to grant the exemption. Without speaking for the zoning department, I can tell you with their authorization that they are supportive of the exemption in this case. And indeed, it was at their suggestion that we come to you to seek your support of the exemption, so that we will be able to make the strongest case possible with the DEEP. And the zoning staff and we, the Yacht Club, feel that such an affirmative endorsement by your commission, having jurisdiction of this historic structure, to the granting of the exemption will be most helpful in our efforts. So let me turn this over to Jim Vos, who has, working with our engineers, as he will detail, carefully examined what the consequences of FEMA compliance would be, because that sets the stage for our request to you as a commission to support our exemptive request to the DEEP. So Jim, I'll turn it over to you to give the overview of what the consequences of FEMA compliance in this case would be with regard to the senior clubhouse.
Thank you, John. Good afternoon, Chair Negron and commission members. Can everybody hear me okay? Great. As John said, my name is Jim Vos, and I chair Pequot Yacht Club's Clubhouse Renovation Committee. And I'll be happy to address the requirements the club would need to meet should it be necessary to make the senior clubhouse building compliant with the FEMA code. As shown in the topographic survey that I believe has been shared with you, a portion of the front porch of the clubhouse extends into the VE flood zone. Since this porch is structurally connected to the main portion of the building, the FEMA requirements pertaining to the VE flood zone apply to the entire building. Now, we've consulted with Race Coastal Engineering, whose engineers have advised us that in order to make the clubhouse building FEMA compliant, its existing stone foundation would need to be replaced with an open, pile-driven foundation, and the building would need to be raised at least 7 feet above its existing elevation. To accomplish this, it's likely that the building would need to be lifted off its present stone foundation and moved to the side to allow for a new pile-driven foundation to be installed in place of the stone foundation. The building would then be put back on top of the pile foundation at an elevation at least 7 feet higher than the existing elevation. In addition to the cost of such an operation, there are other concerns, some obvious and some not so obvious. First, the higher elevation of the first floor would likely require an elevator on the exterior of the building to allow for handicapped access to the first floor, as a ramp to access the higher elevation would need to be at least 100 feet in length and therefore impractical. Second, the senior clubhouse was constructed 191 years ago in 1834 and is in somewhat of a fragile condition. The south end of the clubhouse facing the harbor is slowly subsiding, and the club's made great efforts over the years to strengthen and support the building to maintain its integrity. Nevertheless, none of the window frames is square as a result of the building settling, and it's possible that the building could not survive such a radical procedure as moving it off its foundation or even lifting it. Third, we've been advised it's possible that driving piles to create a new foundation for the senior clubhouse could cause damage to nearby historical structures, and certainly nobody wants that. As I hope you would agree, the Pequot Yacht Club senior and junior clubhouses are two gems in our cherished Southport Historic District. They both have a rich history and have been listed on the State Register of Historic Places and the National Register of Historic Structures in recognition of their status for more than 50 years. Raising the senior clubhouse 7 feet in elevation would cause it to look out of scale with the adjacent junior clubhouse and other nearby historic structures, if the building could survive such an alteration, and therefore, as John has mentioned, jeopardize its continued listing as an historic structure. We hope you agree that preserving the historic status of this building is worthy of an exemption from FEMA requirements, and we respectfully ask your support of this letter to be sent to Planning Director James Wendt. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Jim. So, in essence, stepping back from the legalese, the exemption exists to address just such a case where you have a unique and important and cherished historic structure that you want to keep maintained, and yet with the 50% rule, as it's known with FEMA, FEMA compliance would otherwise be required unless you can demonstrate that in this case, and we think is the case, FEMA compliance, as Jim just described it, would jeopardize the structure's integrity and its historic status. And as I said, the Planning and Zoning Department is in concurrence with this and sought a suggestion on our part that we come to you and ask for you as the jurisdictional keepers of this historic structure within the Southport Historic District to join us in our efforts, which hopefully will be successful in achieving the exemption from the state because of the unique circumstances here. And that's why we brought the draft letter to the chair. I want to thank the chair, by the way, for your assistance in getting this before you. I want to thank the commissioners for their time and consideration in putting this on. But we hope you will support us in our efforts to what, as a practical matter, amounts to saving this historic structure, because FEMA compliance, as Jim has described it, I will not be overly dramatic, but having sat through the meetings with our engineers, could very well be a death sentence, not only for the historical status of the building, but in this case, to that 190-year-old building itself. So we thank you for your consideration, and we hope you'll authorize the chair to send the draft letter that I think you have to Mr. Wendt. Thank you.
Thank you. Darren, do you have any questions?
So just a couple. Are we able to make any alterations to the draft letter, or are you asking us to accept it wholesale?
No, it's your letter, and it will come from this commission through the chair. So I would not be so presumptuous to tell you what you need to say. Our only hope would be the letter in its essence would support the exemption from FEMA compliance based upon the historic nature of the structure. But the wording you might choose to use or things you might choose to add, that obviously is within your purview.
Wonderful. I 100% endorse the exemption of the building. I don't remember what's in the packet. Did you send over the race material?
I do not believe that was submitted. I believe we submitted the letter.
John, there's also a topographic survey that was submitted showing, well, I'm sorry you didn't get it. We can certainly send that over, but there is a topographic survey showing the line between the A flood zone and the V flood zone. and the porch of the clubhouse extending into the V flood zone. That was the only attachment I sent.
Steven Sternberg is with us today from RACE, and he's been integral in terms of our analysis. Stephen, would it be possible, I don't know if you could do it on a screen share, but to just share so the commission has it for its record now, the survey that Jim just referred to, and that way it could be part of your record.
Sure. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Let's see if I can get it up here.
I guess what I'm asking is if you have a structural report that says, the building is not structurally sound enough to be lifted and moved temporarily, I would love to see that.
We don't have a written report, but Stephen is here. And again, he could offer a testimonial evidence with regard to the jeopardy the building would likely be in if such a raising effort was made. So Stephen, two things now that we've drafted you into service here.
Yes.
One, if you could briefly go over the survey that Jim referred to that's now on the screen and just point out where that VE line is. And then secondly, once you've done that, from your standpoint as a structural engineer, if you could address the commissioner's question in terms of the possible implications of seeking to elevate this 190-year-old building by 7 or so feet.
Sure, I'll try and do my best on both of those points. So this is the survey here. This is kind of the entirety of the property, as I'm sure everyone's kind of aware of how its layout is. The top of the screen here is Harbor Road, and the harbor is on the bottom here. So I'll just kind of zoom in a little bit. You can these thick dashed lines are the limits of the flood zone. So there's actually multiple different flood zones across the property. There's a VE14 flood zone that primarily runs closer to the seawall here, left to right on the screen. And then there's inshore of that turns into two AE zones of different established elevations, 12 and 13. I'll just zoom in a little bit closer here so you can get a feel of where we are. Again, this is the primary clubhouse building here. Here's some of the designation on the split between the AE13 and the AE12. And then anything south of this line is considered in the VE14 zone, as you can see by the designation VE down here at 14. So this thick dashed line cuts across the two-story covered deck here. Since the deck is structurally connected to the building, it effectively grabs the entirety of the building into the more strict VE14 flood zone area for building conformance. So even if this deck wasn't connected, it would still be in an AE13. It's more or less, we're more or less dealing with the same types of ramifications. It's going to need to be elevated. That disruption alone could pose problems to the building as far as moving it, either sliding it off to the left or right, or just getting it high enough that new foundations could be constructed. So in one regard, it doesn't matter too much whether it was in that VE or that AE zone, because the potential disruptions, I think, are one of the bigger concerns, even beyond the look if it survived it. So that's a kind of the lay of the land. I don't know if I have any photos specifically of the foundation to share, but regardless, we're dealing with a John, I think you had the date 18. What was the date of construction of the building?
1834.
1834. So as it is, and I'm sure if anyone's been in the club, nothing's quite straight or plumb or square. So we're working with the structure alone that obviously has seen age and seen time. So trying to get that elevated, we're talking about potentially 7 feet or so, 8 feet. Ultimately, we got to get up a little higher so that eventually it can be lowered back down. So again, it's not to say it can't be done, but there's certainly challenges and risks involved with that. And again, what the damages may be to it once it's back in its final position, it's hard to say definitively But I'm not sure it's a risk that people are willing to take for the structure itself or the overall look. So I guess that's kind of a quick synopsis on that.
Thank you, Stephen, very much.
Anything else, Darren?
No, I don't think so.
Art Gavanis, do you have any questions?
I do. Jack, two items I wanted to bring up. Number one, what's the time frame you're talking about? And secondly, as far as the action, by the commission here, are you expecting just an approval now in our executive session? I know Commissioner Locke had asked for some items that might be useful. I guess I want to get a sense of what procedurally you're expecting.
Yeah. Art, I'll start with the second question. I mean, what we are hopeful of, and I believe, and I won't speak for the chair, but I believe she had some conversations with the town attorney that I did as well. I mean, the expectation here is that we would like to have a letter of support from your commission with regard to our efforts to obtain the exemption under statute that is allowed in this type of situation where you're dealing with a historic structure, the integrity of which will be diminished and threatened if FEMA compliance is required. So ultimately, I think it was the position of the town attorney, and the chair can address this, that her authorization to sign such a letter on behalf of the commission should obviously come from the commission. So it's on your agenda, not for the type of formal action you normally see. There's no certificate of appropriateness here, because if that were to come, it'll come at a much later date when we've determined what, if anything, what we want to do with the building, and if it involves any exterior alteration at all, which it might not. So that's the process. You're here. There's a draft letter that the chair suggested we submit, so you would have something to consider. And then it would be your endorsement, either through informal authorization, or if you prefer a vote, to authorize the chair on behalf of the commission to send that letter to Mr. Wendt in support of the effort to get an exemption from FEMA requirements. As far as time frame, we have no immediate time frame with regard to specific renovations, internal or otherwise, to the clubhouse. But before we further engage that and spend time and effort to try to determine what we would like to do to upgrade the facility, we'd like to have the exemption in place, so that if you are good enough to approve the execution of this letter on behalf of the commission, and we send that to Mr. Wendt, then we would, along with the planning and zoning department, expeditiously pursue the approval of the exemption by the DEEP.
Okay, yeah, that's what I was getting at. Thanks for that, Jack. So in other words, the deliverable on our end is the letter in support.
Correct. That's what we're hopeful that you'll authorize and we can submit, because both I and the planning and zoning staff feel that letter would be particularly helpful and substantive here, because this structure is within your jurisdiction statutorily, because it is located in the historic district, and that we hope would have a good deal of weight with the DEEP, considering your statutory responsibility with regard to such structures within the district.
Got it. Okay, thanks for that, Jack.
Thank you, Art.
Jim Bohan, do you have any questions?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you all. So the letter could simply be stating that the historic nature of this building qualifies for an exemption from the FEMA regulations. That's the basic sense you're looking for.
Yeah, I mean, as I said to the commissioner a moment ago, the ultimate word smithing is yours. But yes, what we're looking to impart and what we would like the commission to support is just that. And that is that the integrity, the historic integrity of the structure, as evidenced by its placement on the state and national register, could be threatened and diminished if technical FEMA compliance was required. So yeah, that's the essence of what, you know, we hope the letter imparts, and we would like your endorsement of.
Good. That sounds doable. We're not in a position to predict whether the structure will survive with that exemption. We're not qualified to do that.
Right, and as I say, that we're not suggesting that that is going to happen or that it's the only basis for the exemption. What we do know is even if the building were to survive such a significant elevation at 190 years old, we're still going to have a very problematic impact in terms of the aesthetic and historic quality of the building.
Right.
By way of its elevation of over 7 feet. It's out of character with the streetscape that surrounds it with other historic buildings. The fact that to then satisfy code compliance, we'd have to build an exterior elevator, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So all those things taken into totality, we feel support a finding that the exemption is appropriate here. And we lay all that out in the draft letter that you have in front of us, specifically in the second paragraph. And then, you know, we talk further about the potential ramifications of elevation in the first paragraph on the second page. But all those things taking in total, we think are relevant to the qualification in this situation for the exemption.
But
And-
some of those are not relevant to us, like the burdens of complying with the FEMA regulations. That I don't think belongs as an element of that letter. Our letter is that, yes, FEMA compliance here would damage the historic setting that we have.
I agree.
Okay, okay.
That's what we're ultimately trying to impart to the DEEP, and we feel there's not a better source of confirmation of that than the Historic District Commission.
Okay.
And John, just for the record, I
Okay,
did
thank
not
you, John.
share with, sorry, Jim. Just for the record, I did not share with the commission the draft letter, mainly
excuse me.
because I wanted them to first listen to what you guys needed to present so that we can, as a commission, figure out what's the best way to
Understood.
draft the letter. So,
So you have a draft letter that we prepared. It's dated January 25, but as the chair said, we hope that embodies what we've tried to outline today as being facts that are supportive of the exemption. But however you determine to articulate it, ultimately what we're hopeful of is a letter from the Historic District Commission having jurisdiction in the Southport Historic District over this building, endorsing an exemption here based upon concerns and considerations about the impact of the historic status of the building if FEMA requirements were imposed.
That's a reasonable request, John, yes.
That's all we're looking for, Mr. Bone.
for the next one, Mara, do you have any comments or questions?
Yes. First of all, conceptually, absolutely supportive, but just had a couple quick questions. One, you mentioned in the presentation that there are portions of the building that is subsiding. So that is a concern as you go forward. So, you know, clearly it doesn't work very well to raise it up and do the pylons and everything else, but is the solutions, is that going to be part of the renovation, addressing the parts that are subsiding? And is that going to bring you back at all to FEMA, or is that purely a structural issue?
don't think it would bring us back to FEMA if they grant the exemption. Clearly, you know, one of the things that Jim's committee, because he does chair this long-range committee, will be looking at will be, you know, issues with regard to ensuring that the building is, you know, well-maintained as we want it to be. That could bring us back to you, either for a certificate of repair or as part of perhaps a more comprehensive certificate of appropriateness application once we figure out what, if anything, we intend or would like to do. But as I said, we don't want to get engaged in that process in depth until we've have assurance that the exemption is necessary. Because if we knew that the exemption was not going to be
Yeah,
granted,
no, I hear you. I just wanted to kind of get a sense of the magnitude of the concern about it subsiding. You know, so it sounds like that's not something that's overly urgent, because that would cause you to have to do some
Right.
serious structural issues, which could bring us right back around the loop.
correct. No, I don't think we're not in an emergency situation. Long range, it's
Okay.
something we might want to include in our analysis of long-term needs, but if we're not in a situation,
Okay.
we have an emergency that we'd have to ask you to help us address.
Okay. So my second question is, what are the goals for the renovations?
I would let Jim give an overview of that, but right now I think it's premature. I don't want to put him on the spot because we're at a very, you know, preliminary stage here. We're looking at, you know, the club's long-term needs and things that we might like to address for our membership. So I don't think it would be fair to you. We don't really have a plan at this point, but we have.
So I guess to keep it really simple, and I don't want to put you on the spot, just given what you're saying, it sounds like you might be talking more internal than external, or things that aren't necessarily external structure to the building.
That's possible. It's possible. That's certainly a primary focus of the renovations that we're thinking conceptually about would be, you know, some internal renovations that we'd like to address. But to the extent there are any external aspects of it, we fully would vet those on a preliminary and then a formal basis with this commission.
Absolutely. And the only reason I'm asking is, again, just due diligence. I have to ask the question. And then I think the only thing we can do is make sure in the letter there's a caveat that this exempts us from, that we will have to review any changes that are brought in.
Correct. And
okay.
You'll find when you see the draft, I include that qualification in the letter. I make it clear in the second paragraph of the letter that the Historic District Commission, any exterior alteration visible from any public right of way will be, of course, subject to review by the Historic Commission for purposes of a consideration of a certificate. So I cover that. So there'll be no misconstruing the letter. You maintain.
So you're CYAing and we're going to CYA. So
right.
It's all good.
Yes. Right.
Okay. All right. That's all my questions.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I think everyone has asked the questions that I might have had, so I don't have any further questions.
Thank you.
For you.
Thank you all for your consideration on this, and again, putting this on your agenda. We appreciate it very much.
But Rosina, could we see a copy of that draft?
Yes.
Your draft?
Yes.
Okay.
It's John's draft, so we'll share that draft, but I did not want to send it prior to the meeting just because I wanted everyone to kind of listen to the presentation and kind of had the chance to discuss without just having the letter specific in front of you guys.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you, Rosina. Good.
And I did not receive any communication in favor of kind of the discussion that we're having today or anything opposing the discussion that we had. So that's it for this application.
Thank you very
So-
much.
Thank you.
Thank
So
you,
the-
everyone.
Thank you, Jim. So the hearing is now closed, and we're gonna start the considerations for the public hearing. So the first item in the agenda is Jim and Kate Rogers, 221 Harbor Road, Southport, Connecticut, for a property located at 221 Harbor Road. Items A, remove the existing non-compliant cobble half parking strip along Harbor Road. B, widen the existing driveway entrance to 20 feet to allow for 2 cars. And C, build new driveway entrance with asphalt from street into the property and a thick cobble band that leads into the garage in the rear. Is there a motion?
I'll
Make a motion to, oh. I'll make a motion to approve as submitted.
Mara will second.
I'll second it. Yep.
Okay, so Darren and Mara. Are there any discussion? Hearing no discussion, let's take a vote. All in favor? Jim, you're voting.
Yes,
Okay, so all in favor. There's no opposed, so the motion passes. The second item in the agenda is Andy and Darren Locke, 515 Stilson Road, Fairfield, Connecticut, for a property located at 515 Stilson Road, to take action on the study guide for the Caroline and Walker Sherwood House local historic property designation. It will be basically to have this move on to the RTM. Is
I'm
there a motion?
recusing myself, Rosina.
Correct. Thank you. Is there a motion?
I'll motion to move it on.
I'll second
Move
it.
So Maura and Jim. Is there any discussion?
I think it's Darren's done a great job pushing this through. So well done.
Yes,
Agree.
Okay. All in favor? All 4 of us. There's none opposed. Darren is the abstention. The motion passes. The next one is Pequot Yacht Club, 647 Harbor Road, Southport, Connecticut, for a property located at 669 Harbor Road, Southport, Connecticut, to discuss and take such action as is appropriate to write a letter to the Town of Fairfield Planning and Zoning Department regarding the FEMA requirements and possible exemption regarding the Pequot Yacht Club. Is there a motion?
I'll make a
Yeah.
motion to write a letter in favor of an exception to the Planning and Zoning Department regarding Pequot Yacht Club structure.
Is there anyone to second?
Art will second.
Okay. Is there any discussion?
So there's a couple of things that I would love to, after we see the letter, I would love to have a crack at, helping to alter any language or what have you. There's a couple of things that I think are sort of gray areas that could be difficult for us to navigate, and having been part of situations like this in the past, I've seen a lot of those gray areas come back to bite the applicant. I think that as a commission, we have to be very careful how we discuss any external changes that may or may not happen, because we cannot present any sort of idea of bias. So I think there needs to be, obviously, Attorney Fallon said that there's a caveat in the draft letter saying, we would have to review whatever external changes, but we have to be careful not to say like all of these exterior changes are going to affect everything. The other thing that I think we need to be careful of is that we are not proprietors of the National and State Register. And that does not fall under our jurisdiction. Although the process to delist something from the state or national register can come from, the public, at the end of the day, we're not proprietors of it. So I think we also need to be careful about that language and make sure that we're conveying that we think that, it could be something as simple as, going for FEMA compliance can adversely affect the character defining features that make this structure a contributing resource within the district, both locally and state register of historic places wise, something along those lines. So I'm just concerned with the wording of the letter, and I would love to have a crack at it if the draft letter needs to be altered in any way.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'd like to volunteer to be part of that review process too.
Okay. Anyone else has any comments?
Add me to that review process as well.
No, I mean, I think, Darren, you kind of got this gist of it. That's where I'm also being careful because there's a lot of circular moving parts going on this. So we have to kind of be careful.
And can you remind me what he said in terms about time frame? I'm sorry, I don't remember what he said already.
I heard that they don't have one.
I
I
don't
thought it
have
was
one
very
because
vague.
There's no time frame at the moment.
So in the past, in situations like this with other HDCs, a draft letter is circulated and then comes back to the commission to work on in a public forum or in a work session. So if we could get this on the agenda for next month,
Yes,
Rosina, that would be wonderful.
yep. We'll do that.
Or if we can set up like a separate work session, if that's more, appropriate.
It might be, yes. So I think we're done with the discussion. Let's take a vote. All in favor of drafting a letter? Okay, everyone, no opposed, no abstentions. The motion passes. Thank you very much. The next item is to approve the minutes. The first one is from January 9th, 2025. Present at that meeting was Darren Raymond Locke, George Clark, Art Gravanis, Jim Accomando, Jim Bohan, and myself. Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes as submitted.
And I'll second it.
I'll make one comment before that. The date on the year on the draft minutes is incorrect. It's being fixed by our recording secretary. So with that change, are we still good for
I'll make a motion, I'll amend the motion to accept the minutes, not as presented, but with the change to the year.
who seconds?
I'll second.
Okay. All in favor? Okay, none opposed. And the motion passes. The next one is from January 29th, 2025. This was a special meeting. Present at that meeting was Jim Bohan, Maura Garrick, and myself. Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second it.
Okay. There's any comments? No comments. Let's vote. All in favor? None opposed and none abstentions, so the motion passes. The next one was the pre-application meeting on January 30th, 2025. Present at that meeting, here. We only have 2 people, so I think we might have to wait on that one until the next meeting. So we'll bring that one again when everyone that was present at that meeting is present in the meetings. The next one is the chairman's report. There are 2 repairs. One is for 524 Pequot Avenue to repair the wood stair and porch. And the next one is 2736 Bronson Road to repair the areas of rot on the entryway structure. There's no violations at this moment. There is 1 violation to be removed from the land records. This is for 176 Main Street, 1B in Southport, Connecticut. Then old business, the handbook update. I'll give you the update. The subcommittee met on February 5th, 2025. We went to the Fairfield Museum Archives, Town Planning and Zoning, and spoke with engineering. We are trying to get a clear GIS map for the historic districts. And in speaking with the person at the engineering department, we basically just have to provide them with the information that is the boundaries of the historic districts for them to update the GIS that the town currently have to be a little bit more precise. So we'll be doing that next week. We received a response from SHPO regarding the extension that we had been discussing. There is no need to have an extension at this moment because our grant expires on January 31st, 2026. So in theory, we have about a year to work on the handbook and complete it. If there is a need for an extension, then we'll move for that when it comes closer to the time. Another thing that we need to, and perhaps everyone can put their minds into it, we need to come up with good examples of additions in our districts. If you remember one of the projects that has been discussed in the past, just share that with me and we can forward it to Chris Kelly. We're also looking for inappropriate stone walls within the districts. If you come across any, and provide the address or provide an image, and also examples of good playgrounds and equipment that we have reviewed. So those were some of the things that Chris Kelly has been looking into. And if we can help him, it will move things forward a little. Okay. Then for new business, I met with Tom Harris and Michelle Cardenti on February 7th to discuss a little bit about budget, but also just kind of introduce each other because I'm new as a chair and they are, I believe, new in their position. So we just met briefly. There was an invitation for an in-person public meeting on Tuesday, February 18th from 6 to 8 at Lolo Middle School to discuss existing conditions on the I-95 between the exit 19 and 20 as part of a mobility study. Let me see if I can share this with you guys. Give me 1 second. So this is what we received. If anyone's interested in attending this meeting. There's one here in Fairfield, there's one in Bridgeport, and there is a virtual one. I can share this with the commissioners in an email if that helps.
Yes, please.
Yes, please.
Yep.
And then another item that I received an email from was 740 Old Post Road. They are proposing to renovate the garage, and it falls outside of the area of renovation falls outside the historic district. It's kind of interesting. Some of the properties in Old Post Road, half of it falls within the historic district. Part of it doesn't fall within the historic district. So the architect asked if we could write a letter indicating that the renovation falls outside of the historic district. So what I can do is I can share with you guys the information that was provided, and perhaps if we are able to do a special meeting for the letter of the Pequot Yacht Club, we could also try to talk about drafting a letter for this property as well that falls outside of the historic district.
So the whole renovation is outside of the district or just a piece of it?
The whole renovation,
Okay.
because it is on the back side. It's on the second floor of the existing one level garage and behind that garage.
Okay.
So I will share with you guys all this information. And perhaps if we can find the time to do a special meeting, we can tackle both of the letters. So.
Sounds
That
good.
should be easy.
Yep.
And then another request for a meeting came in, and it was relating. Give me 1 second, please. So there was one more request for a pre-application type meeting that perhaps if we can do that one plus the letters, or do that one separately, if we can think of times and days that everyone might be available, that will be helpful. Let me double check what was that. Give me 1 second, please. It is regarding the Sasquatch Board and representatives of the Southport Conservancy. They, let me read you guys what the message was. 3 members of the Sasquatch Board and representatives of the Southport Conservancy, including an owner of a home near the intersection noted below, have been working with the Fairfield Engineering Department on a proposed set of improvements at the intersection of Station Street, Pequot Avenue, and Chester Place in Southport Village that will improve the safety of cars entering, either turning onto Pequot Avenue from Station Street or to cross Pequot Avenue to travel onto Chester Place. The issue is simple. Both motorists and pedestrians alike cannot see around the corner. 100% blind spot looking east until they've entered Pequot Avenue and put themselves in harm's way if a car is coming around the blind corner. There is significant pedestrian traffic in the morning, consisting of those students of the Southport School who travel by train to the Southport station and who need to cross Pequot Avenue onto Chester Place, and other pedestrians trying to cross Pequot Avenue who've arrived at the Southport train station. The engineering department has a proposal to share that will greatly improve safety at its dangerous intersection, and for which we understand needs to be approved by the town planning and zoning. Mega Jane from the engineering department will be able to present the proposed changes, and we request to be included in the agenda for February, but they missed the February submission date. The police commission has signed off on this proposed safety improvement. So what I believe might be helpful is to have perhaps a pre-application meeting for this so that they can come present. We get a clear idea of what they are proposing, and then if possible, they can come with a certificate of appropriateness application in the next meeting. So if we can think, perhaps it might be better 2 separate meetings, one for the letter, one for the Pequot Avenue improvements. Just let me know. I'll circulate some dates and times that might be possible, and you guys can all share your availability. So that's all for new businesses. Is there anyone else that might have any new business? Hearing none, is there a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I'll
Jim,
second.
Jim seconds. All in favor? Everyone's in favor. So the meeting has concluded. It's 5:22. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.